even a primary school friend like Julian. Because there's a greater good and a greater want that you want to see of what we offer ourselves. And for my father to offer himself, coming back from even his own high school days and still in it now, there must be something driving him, not just the want for power that most people think that we do want to go forward in building Jamaica. So, without any further ado, and I want to thank the UTECH Visions, let me invite my father, my friend, our party leader, and the next Prime Minister of Jamaica. Thank you.
They can't keep up with the man down. Always keep a smile when they both need to frown. Keep the vibes up.
I didn't know we were at a But Rashida, Julian, members of the UTECH Vision Group, members of the UTECH community, comrades and friends, good afternoon. I really want to first of all thank UTECH Visions for having organized this session here this afternoon. It is an afternoon with mixed emotions because today Judge Jermaine Mason, in fact we received the sad news, he used to train here and with the MVP club and lost his life tragically. And I guess it gives us a reminder of the great possibilities which all of us can manifest, but also of the temporariness of life and events. But the task this afternoon, I understand we're going to have a reasoning. But as I was coming here, I realized that the group that invited me is called UTECH Vision, and I really focus on the word vision. And I think that what I would like to do is really to share some ideas, some thoughts about the vision that certainly drives me, a vision that I think has had long duration in the country, and the vision that I think is a vision worth fighting for, a vision that potentially defines our future and a future for the country, a future worth fighting for on behalf of the country. I don't intend to spend time really talking about how my vision evolved. But quite frankly, I think, well, without dwelling on the past, we must realize, all of us, every single human being, every single Jamaican, must recognize that we are able to exist, to enjoy whatever it is we enjoy, to struggle whatever it is we struggle for, because there were generations who came before. Beginning with wherever you want to begin it, whether it is with Shamsharp or Bogle or Garvey or Manley or Buster or Michael Manley, we all are here because there was a struggle before us, an effort before us, and a vision before us. Now, the People's National Party and the vision that gave it birth was a vision that didn't begin with the People's National Party, but certainly took political expression in the modern period with the People's National Party. It was a vision of a Jamaica of equality, a Jamaica where every single Jamaican would have a better opportunity than the one that was found when 70 odd years ago the party was formed. A vision of expanded opportunities for all, and indeed it was a vision of a country where poverty would have been eliminated. There are those who say this is all impractical, airy-fairy, doesn't have anything to offer now. And it is true that from the vantage point of many young people, look at a world where the future oftentimes seems grim and dim, where you have practical realities like meeting school fees, paying, in fact, if the news today is to be recognized and given regard, the payment of the government's commitment to pay 300 million over to the University of the West Indies and UTECH in order to prevent students being deregistered gives just one indication that there are many, many students who can't face the costs for fees, etc. The fact is that as much as we applaud this 300 million, there was no provision for it before. That's another question. And it is the real task of meeting those expenses would have been made worse by the fact that the same authorities have caused transport costs to go up because of the particular revenue package that was put in place, rents to go up because of the property tax impact, and all of these things. I mentioned that not to get into a debate about taxation, but just simply to say that the solutions that we see are not momentary solutions born of finding a 300 million here or 100 million there, which quite frankly is going to be added to the amounts that are already owed to the institutions by the authorities. So the question that arises is, what vision, what mission ought we to be pursuing? Many people say, and we are living in a period of heavy individualism. Every man says, by every man for himself and woman. And I don't really business with anybody else. Many people live by that. But quite frankly, that really cannot carry you far. The very essence of society means that in reality we are our brothers and sisters' keeper. All that we have has been made possible, believe it or not, by efforts made by other people on our behalf. The nature of society itself, and certainly our conviction as a political party, is that each individual has an obligation of necessity to the collective. We are here, I am here, I went to JC too. I went to JC because a political movement sought to open up educational opportunity. Prior to 1957, there were 12 scholarships for people without means to go to high school. 12. It started with 2000, 1957. Today there are 40,000 places in secondary institutions. I say more about the education challenge. But that is because of the collective effort. All the policies, whether it is policies for better housing or access to land, better health care, all of that was made possible because of the collective effort. And we all know people can exist and because of antisocial attitudes, crime, violence, all of these things are issues. So my point is the need for a collective effort. Now, what is this vision? Because our challenge is really to complete a mission. Complete a mission that has been defined. Complete a mission that has been defined, but which still leaves a lot to fulfill it. Equality. We are in a society which was defined by its very formation as a society with haves and have-nots. Without going into the history, that was the very essence of our past. Opportunities have opened up, but we still have to be 20% of the population that is defined as being below the poverty line, 1 in 5. We still have today 700,000 people, approximately a quarter of the population, that are defined as squatters. We still have today an educational system that, quite frankly, despite all the efforts that I have described earlier, common entrance and what they call it, GSAT, we still have an educational system which is essentially a two-tiered educational system. That's why parents struggle so hard after GSAT to try and get, if your child got to school B, that they say is not a name brand school. They will fight tooth and nail to get you into the name brand school. Because for too many people, your life chances get settled at 12 or 11 years old, depending on which school you get to go to. It is the completion of that mission, the fulfillment of that vision, which certainly I am committed to. That is what impelled me to become involved. I mean, Mikey incorrectly talk about 89 as a starting point. No disrespect intended by him or by me. But for me, I must say my whole life has been that struggle, because it started from when I was in high school. But that was a different time, when in fact you couldn't really think about any existence for yourself, separate and apart from. We saw different ways, and quite frankly, I was not always, I was very critical in my years at University demonstrated, very critical of the then People's National Party. But we were in the struggle. And really, we were persuaded, I was persuaded, by Michael Manley and his generation, not in a personal discussion, but by what vision was set out, that the People's National Party was in fact the vehicle of that vision. But that mission is what is going to take us out of the situation where we still have 80% of our young people thinking, of our graduates of our universities, saying that the only option for them is to migrate. That's not a way to chart a future for the country. I don't have anything against anybody migrating. I just was in New York, meet some wonderful Jamaicans in New York. I tell you, as an aside, I probably for about 15 minutes when I finished graduate school, I thought of all my professors said, well, we want you to come and work here. And I thought of it for about 15 minutes. But I knew I couldn't face my father with any notion. Again, not against anyone who did that. But I know that was a certain course for being disowned. But that was a critical part of that vision and mission, was that we were going to create Jamaica as a center of excellence in the world where all could be achieved. What are the issues that we face in terms of building that Jamaica that we seek? And we have made errors. Political parties, collectively and separately, have made errors. One major error, which I spent a lot of time trying to communicate during the last term, is that we had this notion that we could, in fact, build this promised land, this new Jamaica, on borrowed money, rather than setting our economy in a situation where it could actually grow. So that we grew less than 1% per annum between 1970 and 2012, 13, the whole country. Our debt expanded more than 600%. To the point where nobody else was prepared to lend us any money. So lesson one is, let's create an economic environment that allows us to meet the objectives of more and more investment in the social services that the country needs. And you cannot borrow your way to prosperity, whether for a few or for many. Can't do it. Can't do it as an individual, and you cannot do it as a country. That is not to say that you never borrow, but you need to borrow to be productive, not just to spend. Simultaneously though, so we learned that lesson, that we have to run a sensible economic policy, and we had not done so. But we as an organization, as a party, believe that we have to do more. Simultaneously, we have to sustain the environment where more people can get onto the economic playing field. Otherwise, all the economic benefits of improving the investment climate and all of those things are going to flow to the few that already have. because that is what the inheritance has been. That's what the social inheritance of the country, the economic inheritance of the country has been. A few with too much don't know what to do with it, the way enough. And a vast majority either living below the poverty line or just on the edge. And on the edge, understand, I represent a constituency where, quite frankly, if rain fall, you have a crisis. Because your roof is really a roof that only stops sun. It doesn't stop water for too many people. Where if your shoes bust off is a big price. It's worse if you got doctor and them say you need an x-ray. Because the hospital don't have x-ray machine where I work, oftentimes. And you can't afford it if you're going to the private place. That's the reality. That's a reality we need to put behind us as a country. Not to mention all the indignities that people go through every day when you line up at the hospital or wherever you need to get service from government. That's the reality. So we have to get more people on the playing field, which is why one of the things that we believe is essential is access to land, which is why we introduced as almost the first act in my new position to get a set of people to say, how can we solve this particular problem? I know people don't like to go back into the history much, but remember, this is a problem that has been with us from 1838. Because the compensation at the end of slavery, the economic compensation that the British provided, was for the people that had enslaved us, that the man who had been enslaved wasn't deemed as being deserving of any compensation. Didn't have anywhere to live, nowhere to go, and the problem persisted. So the problem that of today's problem of squatting never begin with failures of independent governments, although the failure to solve it can be placed as part of our responsibility as a people. But it is a problem that began from the beginning, because when the formerly enslaved people left the plantation, they had nowhere to go. And they became called squatters. And so it is. You had some church people, that's what you call the baptistry villages. Some church people put together some money, buy something. Some other people in the midst of that did that thing and bought money. But the vast majority of the people have been carrying this weight with them forever. Our job now is to solve it once and for all. We in our generation have to solve it. The land problem is a problem that is connected with residential living, particularly in our urban centers. Half of Lower St. Andrew, or more than half, live in places, families 30, 40 years and still called squatters, and live every day with the frustration, the terror that somebody will come up and say, this is mine. But giving access to the land, a title, creates a whole new stakeholder society, where you get the title to your half acre, your quarter acre, your 3 square, and you can then go to a financial institution and convert that into economic resources to fix your house, although most people fix it just when they have the paper. Not going to trade it in, but they can fix it because they know the structures are not permanent structures, different operation. Or you can convert it into something for your business operations. But equally important, the land issue will assist in solving the problem of a backward agricultural sector. And we will never really resolve the economic issues of poverty unless we deal with the modernization of agriculture in the country. The sad reality, 40% of our agricultural producers have no title to their land. They cannot walk into a bank or other financial institution and become modern in that way. So we, through this, we want to prepare our next PNP administration to hit the ground running in relation to this land problem, because we intend to solve it, or at least have the solutions in place so that we can ensure that that part of the mission is fulfilled. The other key element to satisfying this demand for a more equitable society rests with education. Education. Now, there are all kinds of levels of it. I know that here, the question of fees, the question of how to pay the fees is an important element. The country has some huge issues that we have to decide, because the most fundamental thing, to my mind, we have to ensure that we don't have another kid. We don't have another kid that can come through high school, graduate after 6 years and still can't read and write. Low productivity and low wages, which is a problem that many people face, because even after you leave school here, you're looking at jobs oftentimes which are low wage jobs. But that is connected to low productivity. And we are in the problem where we have 70% of our population, our workforce, has no qualification at all. It's the heart of our problem. But we have to also look at the tertiary level thing. One thing that we did in the last administration was to dedicate 0.5% of education tax to the Student Loan Bureau. I don't know if they are continuing it, but I think we should up the resources and say even 1%, 1.5%, whatever it is. We have to make certain that the resources are inside the Student Loan Bureau, that access is improved along with lowering interest rates to ensure that we can satisfy all the demand that is there. I believe we also need to address issues like ensuring that your repayments are pegged to the kind of salary package that people get after school in the world of work. So you're not spending 80% of what you earn paying back a loan and can't live on the rest. But those are issues. But fundamentally, the big challenge, and we are in the process of identifying a set of educational experts to come and work with us on this. We have to ensure that we take away from parents and everybody else the trauma of this GSAT experience, where you fret depending on which school. Every child going to any school in Jamaica must be assured a basic minimum of high quality education in the country. We have to solve that. Finally, because I'm telling them to sit down, and I'm going to sit down. To accomplish this vision of this better Jamaica, we need a better politics. We need a politics that is able to rebuild trust between people and the political leadership in the country. We need a politics that is not rooted in excessive tribalism and the misuse of state funds on behalf of one party alone. But we recognize that is not government money, but it is money of the hard working taxpayers of the country and mustn't be used to advance narrow self-interest. We need a politics that is not besmirched by the specter of corruption. And we need a politics that is prepared to put long-term national issues at the forefront, the difficult problems of life at the forefront of the political agenda rather than the short-term electoral interests of parties at the forefront of the political agenda. Those are my remarks. I was going to say opening, but the rest of the remarks are yours. So, thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you, Peter. Hear me? Okay. We're gonna move right into the question and answer session because time is on us and I want you guys to get in your questions. But before we do so, another quick fingers. You ready? You're not ready? $37. Are you guys ready? Star 121 star. Can put in the number sign. 37, 79, 1668, 9962. Who got it? Nobody got it. I'm gonna go again. 37, 709, 1668, 9962. I know somebody must have got that. She got it. Alright, so guys, we're gonna move right into the question and answer session. So how this works is that you're gonna raise your hand and this gentleman here is gonna pass the mic to you. We're gonna take 3 questions each time and then give Peter an opportunity to answer. Get you up here.
Good afternoon. You raised several points about why Jamaica is not progressing. You said about the high level of debt, the lack of education, the lack of ownership of land, so they can't be advanced. But these things are not new. So when you say that it's going to change, it's something that people have been hearing for decades. So that's an issue now, is that what's going to be, you say it's going to change, but can I really trust that this time these promises will be upheld?
Next question. Right side.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. One of the issues that we face is that politics in Jamaica fails to involve the young people. And we are saying, if we're going to be the next labor force, the next men and women of this country, involve us because we have a lot of great ideas. We can always do the research, sir, and bring it to you. And we want to pull our chair from that table and become the next leader for this country because we want it. I hope, as my comrade said, that our ideas or the issues that we raise this evening will not be, just another issue that we raise and is passed on. Please, sir, we are here to hear our voice. Thank you.
I'm going to ask that you just say your name. So You can address your bag.
Hello, good afternoon. Student Hamilton. You spoke about the constantly borrowing money, right, to sustain ourselves. You understand me? But we temporarily legalize marijuana, so why don't we use the marijuana, right, and fuel that into medical and create jobs for our Jamaican? We don't even have to export it if we're waiting on America and Canada. We can basically cure our own here and create business and employ our own here and create the more doctors, make some pharmaceuticals from this. You understand? What I really want to know is why are we waiting on America or Canada or whoever we're waiting on?
All right. Let me the first question. What is going to change now? Why now? Will it be different? And I want to connect it to the second comment, which is really a comment about involving the young people. The thing that will guarantee the change, most of all, that you seek is your own involvement, right? So that is my first point on that, because I think that we have to recognize that first of all, we will all learn from what we have done. When Norman Manley and that generation introduced common entrance, and then Michael went through free education, there were successes, there were failures, there were things that became apparent as we went along. Now, one of the things that has and we still don't know all the answers, which is why is it that some schools, the so-called traditional high schools, have continued. They go up and down. Schools, JC went through phases. Performance was going down. It leveled off. Same thing happened. George's, Wilmer's, KC, etc. But what you find is that they have maintained a level. So you have the average pass rate. I don't have the exact numbers, but the average pass rate of the traditionals, meaning getting the percentage of the class getting 5 or more at one sitting, is way over 80. And of the so-called non-traditionals, you're looking at under 30, and in some instances below 20 and 10. In some subjects, the average pass rate, if you take the whole cohort, is about 8% in mathematics. I mean, it is mind-boggling. But there are many issues that we still have to resolve as to why is this so. One issue is, so without going in detail in that, the point is that why all of the things haven't been done is because when they were done, they were not done perfectly. That's the nature of life itself. So we have to learn from our experiences, improve upon them, and you know, that's what life is about, even for us as individuals. Now, another example is the land problem. We introduced LAMP, Land Administration Management Program, so we could transfer land. But the pace at which LAMP is operating is probably by the time we have dealt with all the parishes that are there is probably another century. We can't wait that long. So that is why we're really looking and saying, well, we need to find a way to speed it up. That's each generation will have to stand on the shoulders of the one that went before and hopefully see further. I am paraphrasing Norman Garvan's comments. But on the Ghana question, not only in relation to marijuana specifically, but in relation to lots of other industries and activities as well. We need to find a way to get onto to get up the technological ladder. That's going to require some specific policies, because too often, whether it is with call centers and the technologies involved there, we need to move up the value chain to be processing, doing the drug processing, etc., for medical marijuana, not just smoke it or trade it. Because it's going to emerge like any other industry if we are not careful, and if we don't end up like sugar, where all the processing is done overseas and only basic production is done here. There's no magic to it. In fact, the production systems which they are using in Canada and in fact in the United States, in those states that have legalized it, are much more high-tech and atmospheric controls and modern agriculture as against our grower in the hills of St. Elizabeth, where making our money only because it is illegal. Right? But having said that, last week, Justin Trudeau introduced legislation to legalize it in Canada and do all that he has done. To a much greater degree than Trudeau, because of the size and political weight of Canada. We are going to have to be part of an international movement, simply because it is one thing for the United States federal government, for example, to say we are not going to admit commodities, trade commodities from Jamaica with the rest of trade. And it is another thing for them to say that in relation to the Canadians, just by virtue of the size and the degree of interdependence between themselves and the Canadians. So I am not arguing specifically that we cannot or ought not to do more. I think the authorities now can do much more to speed it up. But I'm really making a point that, as I said, Jack has observed long time ago that the world not level. And it is not going to be made more level just because of the justice of our cause. We have to find a way to work through these real inequalities that exist in the world and find alliances and allies where we can.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon,
State
everyone.
your name.
I'm Andrew Woolley, member of UTECH. When we look at the high school level of students, you spoke about GSAT and how the placing of students is off and therefore problems are seen. But when in that current system we look at where schools that are not tradition, when we send our kids to these schools, then they come out as bottom of the crop because one, teachers don't care again. And that's an issue that we're not only seeing at high school levels, but it kind of comes to university, where teachers don't really seem like they have your best interest at heart. What is the stance of, what is your stance on teachers playing that important role? Because it's really a triangle where parents, teachers, and students. It can't work without one. And yes, some parents are lacking in terms of their own development, but what is being done to ensure that teachers play that important role in nourishing and bringing up kids who will be the next leaders of this country? Another thing, there's been a big talk about accreditations and where University of Technology stands. Definitely some persons at the university feel as though they don't want to continue being here because the going abroad to study or even getting a job is kind of dwindling in terms of having that qualification per se. But what is the government or the whole parliament structure dealing with in terms of having the University of Technology being up to par? I mean, the University of Technology is built from the Constitution of Jamaica. So why not put more resources into the university that you own, but yet you're putting more into a regional body, whereas your country needs to come first, per se.
Any other question? Alright, good afternoon. My name is Lori White. I'm a UWE student. And yeah. Alright, so my question is about Brand Jamaica. So we sing on this notion of Brand Jamaica, but the persons who really benefit from Brand Jamaica are often those exodus to the island, right? So are often people who are outside of the country, right? So I want to know what are your intentions for the development of Brand Jamaica. Research was done by Interbrand believe that the value of Brand Jamaica is 2.5 times that of the gross domestic product. And we've seen where in 2015 there was intellectual property of the Jamaican jerk or Jamaican style or Jamaican type. But I want to know what other plans are there to develop or tap into the value of Brand Jamaica.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Knight, the president for the UTECH Students Union 2017-18. First, let me say thank you for your speech and your vision, and I do hope that if you are given the opportunity, that you will bring us as close to that Jamaica as possible. Now, one of the proverbial problems that we have been having here at UTECH is that of student tuition. Here's the situation. When presented with the continuous increase in tuition on a yearly basis, sometime by the university has the right to raise it between 5 and 10%. It's often 5 and 10%, the maximum. One of the reasons presented to us is this. The amount of student subvention per student given by the government is at the lowest here at the University of Technology. And the question that arises, and I run parallel to my colleague, is this. As the national university, why is it that a university that was established before a university that was established before? A university that was established before UA by the government, not by CARICOM, but by the government. Because it is the national university. It is the only university that says University of Technology of Jamaica. Why is it? So what I want to know the why, and as a former Minister of Finance and potentially the next leader of this great country, provide us one with some enlightenment as relates to student subvention, and two, what are your plans, if any, to increase that for the UTECH populace?
Let me first begin with Andrew's question or comments. I certainly think that we, as a country, we have to do a lot more to deal with this issue of teacher preparation and teacher accountability. And I dare say, attracting the right kind of teacher into the classroom. And I use the right kind in two senses. One is in the sense of the values that are going to be transmitted. The average child spends more time with the teacher in their early years of education than they spend with the parent. When I was Minister of National Security, there was a teacher at a particular school, which I will name, who we locked up for bringing in the largest shipment of illegal ammunition into the country. Gave extra lessons like other teachers. It's a serious problem. You have to ensure in some sort of way that there is a compact between the authorities, the school, Ministry of Education, or where they find it, and parent, that the person that you are making teach their children are transmitting wholesome values and attitudes, because that is where, between the ages of 6 and 15, that is where your worldview is going to get formed. Now, I use it also in the sense of the gender, because we have a problem. Many people may not want to deal with it. We have a problem with the underperformance of boys in schools, which is going to create all kinds of demographic imbalances, problems for girls finding appropriately qualified men to form unions with, and all kinds of things like that. We have a major problem, because the 80% of the graduates of the universities are female, and 80% of the clients of the correctional institutions are male. It's a hell of an imbalance. Soon the only people that the girls can find to link up with will be criminals. Soon. No, I mean, we can deal with it in jest, but it is a serious problem. Now, when I ask the question, the last time there was parity in the graduating class at UW. I don't know what the numbers for UTECH are. But the last time we had parity in the graduating class between male and female at UWI was, I believe, 1983. So the question I ask myself is, what happened in the 6 years, 8 years previously in the schools that may have contributed to this? And what happened, or one of the things that happened, was the exodus of males from the classroom because of the economic crises of the time. Because the males were the main breadwinner in the way families were structured then, if not now. And so they couldn't find, because of all of those reasons, men left and went to sell insurance, do open business, left the classroom. And you were left without the male role model in the classroom. He went to JC, I went to JC a generation before him, by definition. When I was at JC, I was taught by about 4 women in all my years there. When he went there, he was taught by about 4 men. That was the difference. When I get into a fight at JC, the master carry us to the gym and say, if you want to fight, go and fight. But these are the rules. The generation after, you'll probably get expelled. And then there would have been a terrible disaster if that happened to me. Or anybody else for that matter. It's a whole different way in which people discipline, people bring up children, the limits on behavior. So the question arises, if we want more men in the classroom, is the society prepared to provide incentive? These are some big issues which we need to discuss with the teaching profession, as well as the question of accountability standards. Some countries do it by licensing, so that you don't have to just say you went to college, but there we have a fit and proper standard to be a banker. You have to be fit and proper. Do we need a fit and proper standard to be a teacher? Because quite frankly, I believe the teacher is going to determine the future of the quality of life in the country, probably more than the bankers. These are issues we feel have to be addressed, but again, we want to address them on the basis of a dialogue, first of all, with the representatives of the teachers and others. But we think that with the way the society, especially the quality of behavior, I mean, you see it in the newspapers, mashing up JTC bus, them have to have more police at halfway tree transport center, which we contributed to building and designing, but we never contemplated that people are going to see it as a battlefield. These are things that have to be addressed. And the other element, you talk about the three elements in the education process: teacher, parent, student. I would want to add one more: community, which is why we have to have a new politics able to mobilize communities. Because one key difference that between the high performing schools and the low performing schools is community involvement. Whether it is past students associations, church in the case of some schools, or other community support. So that when a school is failing, you have some communities that when a school is failing, the community jump in and say, pull up your socks. You have other schools where the community pray on the school, take away everything, mash it up. That's what we have to deal with. Now, accreditation, simple fact. If we are not careful, we will fail to realize that there are global standards. Our universities need to recognize these global standards. Otherwise, you will have a degree, if you're not careful, which won't have any meaning outside of this 4,000 square miles, which is just too small a space. Moreover, we have to maintain in the world, especially in a small country, we have to maintain those global standards. Now, this links up with the whole question of student tuition that was asked by Granville. And first thing I want to make, I don't think there's any value in us creating a rivalry outside of an academic rivalry between UWI and UTECH or anywhere else. 80% of the registration or more at UWI is in fact Jamaica. But beyond that, quite frankly, I might get thrown out, but I've been here a good while. I would like to see more international Caribbean presence at our universities and international presence. The very logic of university comes from the word universe. It means exposure. to the universe, to the world of ideas and the world of people and the world of diverse cultures. That's what will prepare us for this increasingly integrated world. When I was at UTECH in my undergraduate years, and it wasn't that long ago, long enough, but not that long. But I had my econ tutorial had people like Ralph Gonzalez, Dwight Venner, at a later stage, Owen Hart of Barbados, former Prime Minister, but we were all, Kenny Anthony, we were all studying together, and we were able even now to share a vision of the world. We had people from Africa, we had people from Latin America, and that's what we would need. Now, how we pay for it? That is really at the heart of the question. We have to take some huge decisions. Ultimately, basic proposition that I take is that education ought to be a right. Now, all rights ultimately have to be realized in a practical world. It's like it is right for every man to be treated equal before the courts. But we know that some people can afford some lawyers and other people get a legal aid lawyer, and it's not always the same kind of lawyer. No. As a country, the starting point, I believe, has to be first, ensure that every child gets a basic minimum that we wrote into the Bill of Rights. Basic minimum secondary education, which we are not in fact providing. Now, what that will translate into spending a lot more money at the secondary level in the first instance. And that is why I say the first basic thing I think we need to do at the tertiary level. There are two issues that arise. One is how much will the state pay for it? And then the other, how can we satisfy access to the finances otherwise and facilitate repayment, which means a boosted student loan provision, one. And I believe that we need to provide much more resources for merit-based scholarship provisions for students who qualify. And then, I think the universities and the society has to do a lot more to facilitate the reality of work and study, to do it. And these are the ways that we are going to have to address. But the simple fact of the matter is that what you see going around now is a kind of merry-go-round where people find instant solutions for something, but the long-term solution of the quality of education that is needed so that when you come in, you actually get an education worth the name in the full sense of the word. I'm going to give you a little anecdote. But when I went away to graduate school, I was with some students and we were chatting, and then the guy said, "Wow, I have to leave and I forgot my Arabic class." It just blew my mind because I never know people actually would go and study this. You know, that thing that some people could speak it, but that people were going to a class to study Arabic and study. And I just realized how limited my own experience here at UWI had been. Because if you weren't doing Spanish or French, that was it. But there's a whole world out there. And so we are going to have to find ways. Cross subsidies will be some of the ways, as UWI is already doing. But what I'm really saying is that there's not an easy answer, which is also an honest answer to some of these problems that we will have. But until we are growing the resources that are available, we're not going to be able to make that reality of tertiary education as a right become a reality. As a right, meaning that you don't pay for it, all you have to do is to be qualified for it. That's just the reality as of now. Because if we are doing that, it means, as we are already in the situation of doing that, we are not giving the youth at high school an opportunity. Because remember, more than half of them coming out without the qualification. What is the society's obligation to them? But we can go on. The Brand Jamaica, well, is a testament to our real achievements as a people. Because I don't think there's any other country of equivalent size that is as widely recognized as Jamaica is. Interestingly, just this morning, somebody sent me a video of a Romanian talent show where they had an artist doing a painting to some classical music. And the person he painted, when you saw it all, was Bob Marley. Romania talent show, television show in Romania. So valuable is Brand Jamaica that many other countries exploit it. Coffee is one area, and they have all of these. If you go into the supermarkets in North America, Jamaican style peppers, Jamaican style jerk, all of these things, not authentic Jamaican, but people are the equivalent of photo bombing, product bombing on our things. We have to do a lot more to protect it through copyright measures, through enforcement measures, but also I think we can do a lot more, particularly to marshal the talents of our artists, our musicians and others, not so much to prevent people using our name, but in fact to promote our name. But you have to have products to go behind it. So there's the economic thing. I had a hell of an experience in Switzerland, and we were going out trying to borrow money. Yeah, and we did, because we had to borrow to be repaying, getting lower interest and things. And this guy who was a big bond trader, but he also traded other commodities. And I said, what can I buy from Jamaica? And I was trying to give him an honest answer, but realized that there was very little in the quantities that would interest him that we actually had. Sell it. And these are people who talk in billions. I'm talking tens of billions. So we have to kind of fix it. It is true we're a small country, so we're not going to have huge things. But if we can say, you can come and make an investment in tourism, yes, everybody knows that, but he wasn't interested in that. There is a box, but we have to get into this middling world, this high-tech world, medicinals, marijuana-based or leaf of life-based or anything else that works. We have to get there, and we have to put, I would much prefer giving a free zone and all the freedoms from taxation, etc., that involves for a high-tech engagement. Because what is happening now is that we have some guys who have good degrees, and we go to them and say, call the top, call center. But the guy who has come out with a first-class degree in physics, we're not finding and adequate opportunity for a career path to be exercised in Jamaica. I just don't want us to be at the bottom with the low wage work, whether it's in tourism, which is low wage work, or call center. I'm not against it, don't get me wrong. Every work is a valuable work, good start. But we have to be able to attract our best and our brightest to practice their craft and careers here and build on the value of Jamaica. That's my hope for us.
Young man in the back, and then you have a question. Thank you.
Yeah, blessed evening and blessed love to everyone present. My name is Sajar Kalandels and I'm just a citizen of this great country. Right? I just want to touch on those couple points you did make from the last conference. And I think that it was very important in terms of where the environment is concerned. Right? I think that was very important, right? And I think that it is our own thinking and actions that causes our own destruction and demise. See, so what that means, right? In terms of where the environment is concerned, the onus is on us to take care of it, seeing that a lot of people are dying from cancer nowadays, right? And I think that we have to teach people to be self-sufficient, right? Look, for example, where the inner cities community is concerned, right? I don't like to say ghetto because the word ghetto means to get out, right? So where the inner city community is concerned, they actually show where community development and they actually show where real community is about, right? In terms of, people coming out and being social with each other, right? So we want to teach people not to be anti-social, but to be social with each other, right? And I think that to create a great independent Jamaica, we have to get rid of the lower class and replace it with a labor force and then middle and then upper class. So I just wanted to just say that, yeah? Bless you, Lord.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kim Meyer. I'm a student of UTECH. I'm also a student leader here. A couple of points. Beyond the notion of getting land to the people, there seems to be a disconnect between the government ministries in terms of how they operate, which I find to be a downfall to the country itself. So a database is created at the Ministry of Finance, but when you go over to the Ministry of Security, there's a lag. Moving forward, the governments of Jamaica have to intertwine the two. I know under here, what as Minister of Finance, the TAJ did a lot of collections and they improved the systems and so forth. However, we can't just sit down and have all ministries doing whatever they want, or all the governments coming in and doing whatever they want. The purpose of you and your team is to be a civil servant, a servant to the citizens of Jamaica. So far, we haven't seen that from current or previous administrations. Saying that to say that, or not to say that you have been a bad steward, but we expect a higher level of stewardship from whoever is coming in next, hopefully you and your team. But in the line of the conversation, one Prime Minister is saying he's focusing on education, and you're saying you're focusing on housing. There has to be a connect across the board to focus not a little on a lot, but a lot on the little, so that we can maximize our productivity. And I find that as a downfall of Jamaica. So within your upcoming manifesto, whenever it is, and going forward throughout your town hall meetings and so forth, I want to hear more about a connected country, a connectivity that allows its citizens to benefit from the state and the state to benefit from the citizens. That has been our country's downfall. Not if I own a piece of land or how educated I am. Those add up into it. But the system itself has failed us because there is really no system. Every day somebody gets up in a ministry, they propose a bill or a form or something. You fill it out, you move along, but it only stays within that ministry. We have to be able, I work in an organization that does processes throughout all 14 parishes and outside of Jamaica. And if I go to a location in Kingston today, and by the time I get to the location in Montego Bay, that information is already there in a multiple number of applications for whatever I needed to get done. I am hoping that in the nearest future, Jamaica will be like that. So no longer will we just get up and add a $60,000 tax to businesses. However, we'll have a tax net wide enough to draw in everybody, as opposed to an indirect tax versus a direct tax. Because frankly, I'm upset about that. I pay direct tax and then I come around and pay indirect tax. So pushing forward, Sir Peter, please, the systems need to be integrated. I know it takes a lot of resources, a lot of funding, a lot of energy to get it done. But if you don't want to have this problem after you have, well, you will be passed. But if we in the country don't want to have that problem after 20 years, it makes no sense that we keep on just fixing a little bit of nothing. But to get the job done correctly. Thank you.
Hi, afternoon. I just want to know what's your team's approach to fighting crime in Jamaica. I've noted where the Underholders administration, their approach is militarizing the JCF and giving them authority to abuse citizens of certain areas. I want to know what are your plans for fighting crime? Because if we want the country to grow, we have to reduce and eventually get rid of the crime in the country. So I just want to know what you and your team will be doing.
We have a question from Twitter. Just gonna throw this in. This is Rodney says, what book would you recommend as a must read?
Many. Well, I would say the book that helped open my eyes probably most. There are many books, but I am going to just speak of one now. C.L.R. James' Black Jacobins. Right? C.L.R. James' book called Black Jacobins. It deals with, putting it very loosely, with just the formation of the Caribbean's presence at the formation of the modern world as we know it. And so well, there's so much that can be said about it. That's my next visit. I won't make a comment because I agree entirely with what was said about the environment and our need to protect it. Especially given that we are a small island state in a period of global warming and massive environmental change. And if we are not careful, we have reached like the Seychelles and Maldives, where they are looking at the prospect of the whole country disappearing. But important parts of our country can be imperiled if we don't fashion proper strategies of building resilience and counteracting environmental degradation. I'm going to say something brief, and I'm going to ask Julian to speak a little bit because it is part of his responsibility and the whole question of using the new information technologies in a way to get ahead of our problems of administration and building the efficiency of administration. The truth is that a lot of the use of new technologies has been driven by the vendors of these technologies rather than by our own effort to get ahead of the curve as far as improving the efficiency of administration across the line. There are some, when we start to talk about saving costs in government, I mean, and not just, I remember we did a little study. We were spending, in fact, looking back to the question of crime, the police force was spending more on telephone calls between different agencies than they were spending on maintenance for police stations at the point in time. And these are ways in which if we were to build an intranet within government agencies, for example, which were some of the tasks that we had set ourselves, we would be not only making it more efficient in terms of the communications, but actually saving a lot of resources that could be then deployed to things that gave us more value in all of these areas. And there's a lot of data that we collect which we don't utilize. We don't have, for example, a real policy on citizenship. Lots of people apply. We don't know, we collect the data, but we don't analyze it as a country to know we're getting more people from Burma, India, West Africa. What are their professional qualifications? How many of them come and leave? What informs a policy? Or is it that anybody who wants to can come? Which is really what it is now. You know, unless you say this person is proven to be a mass murderer, which very few are proven to be. So we have that particular problem. But Julian, who was directly and is directly responsible, I'm going to ask him to say something more. But before, let me say on crime. First of all, we're not going to go anywhere unless we deal with this issue of crime. Second point is that we have learned many lessons, and we need to, some good, some bad, and we need to stop repeating the same lessons. The point about militarization and the belief that just applying more force to poor communities, we have learned that lesson. It doesn't work. We had a Suppression of Crime Act introduced in the 1970s by a PNP administration, and I will say repealed by a PNP administration, to our credit and to P.J. Patterson's credit as Prime Minister at the time, because the introduction of the gun court and special emergency measures, and you could go through anywhere in the country and without search warrant and all of that, the crime didn't go down. And all that happened was that the police lost respect for the rights of the people, and the people lost respect for the police. And the consequence of all of that was the failure to have a trust relationship between people and the security forces, without which law enforcement in the normal sense cannot work. So that is one lesson on the negative side which we learned. The other lesson which we learned more recently was that social intervention in the communities is cheaper and delivers more reduction in actual violent crime than any policing measures. We learned that. I think most important, what you really need in addition, and what we have learned, and which is one lesson that we learned, which we seem to be unlearning, is that you mustn't politicize the question of crime fighting. Don't make it into a political football and chat foolishness about you can't sleep safe under one administration and you can't sleep safe under another. It's foolishness. You divide the countries. Determination to confront something which will destroy all of us. And you need resources to provide a modern, intelligence-led, honest, well-paid and rewarded security force. Those are lessons that we have learned. But because of the politicization of the issues, people want these quick fixes and a suggestion that there is some easy solution around it. You need to provide mobility. You need proper intelligence gathering, intelligence-led policing. You need to create the systems that weed out unreliable or corrupt officers from the force, from the security services generally. And you need to have swift discipline. Lots of other things we can talk about. But I'll just make one simple point. We started out independence with a JCF and a JTF. The reputation of the JTF has remained intact, not so the JCF. One critical difference between the two is the character of the discipline and the swiftness with which one service can root out anyone who is in breach of their rules as against the other. And we need to just put these things in practice, and these are issues around which we should be collaborating. But to collaborate, you have to have an honest discussion, not just try a thing and see if you can get the public to believe in the thing you're trying, even though you have given it no study and done anything. As Peter Bunting pointed out in Parliament, we have about 5,000 promises and not one fulfilled. We need to get real about dealing with the problem and stop this face card approach to serious issues that the country faces.
Just respond quickly, I don't see the gentleman anymore. But on the issue of linking systems in government, there were two things with it. In 2015, we established the Office of a Chief Information Officer for Government, which was the first time we were doing it in the history of the country, to have an office that would coordinate what all the ministries, agencies, and departments were doing, which up to now still operate independent autonomous systems. Secondly, we did a lot of work, and I heard the Minister announce it last week, to establish what is called GovNet, which is to connect the communications infrastructure between the ministries, agencies, and departments. We spend about between 8 to 12 million US dollars a year as a government on communications, meaning government, ministry A, calling ministry B, etc. We have the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, the fiber to connect to each other. So the implementation of government will reduce our communications costs and allow the agencies to be able to communicate and share data and information much more quickly and seamlessly. So those things have started. They take a while because it's not just an implementation of a computer system. You have to deal with processes, you have to deal with people. But that process started from when we were in office. And my understanding, it has continued with the current administration.
Thank you. Unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. So we're gonna wrap up now. But Before we do so, I have another question for you. A chance to win a token. Yes, but this is a gift. I have some more credit now. So, alright, so who can answer this question? Who is the longest serving party leader? What is must the people you were talking about? Couldn't be asking about the other party.
The hand.
I just asked. Wait. Okay,
Rashida, I think she was first.
she was first? Okay. Khadija.
Hi everyone, I'm New Vision's president. The answer to that is Norman.
Yes.
How many years? So how many years he served? 30 to 69. And then Michael was 69 to 92. EJ was 92 to 06. And Portia was 06 to 07.
Quick fingers. Alright, you ready? Star 121 star. 31 83 4. 39 82 04 17. Got it.
Over there.
I have another one. Here's another one. Star 121 star. 12 14 7. 0131 69 89. That's an easy one. Somebody got it? Who got it? No lie.
I don't understand that.
How many hats you wear?
I have another one. Ready? 84 760 58 90 92 19. Who got it? Somebody got it? Alright, sorry. Anyways, guys, we're gonna wrap up now. But Peter.
I said at the beginning, some of you may want to get more involved in the party. We have visions here, which I'd all encourage you to join. But if you want to be involved directly with the party, we are open. We welcome your involvement and your interest. I'd invite you. You can probably go through Rashida, provide your contact information to her so that we can incorporate it. There are a number of important tasks that will take place over the next couple of weeks and months that we will want you to be involved in. Okay?
Just one more thing to that point, and thanks, Comrade Julian. How many of you guys are on social media? Clearly everybody, right? Please follow Peter David Phillips on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram. And let's start a conversation. Keep it going. Alright guys? Peter David Phillips and PNP Jamaica on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Peter D. Phillips.
PD Phillips JA on Facebook and Twitter. Dr. Peter Phillips on Instagram.
Dr. Peter Phillips on Instagram.
PD Phillips.
PD Phillips at
PD
on
Phillips
Twitter
JA on
and
Twitter and Facebook.
And Facebook. You guys with me? We're gonna follow? Keep the conversation going, okay? Because we have things to talk about. Thank you.
Or just search for the hashtag forward together and you will find us.
And guys, you can join us. We have meeting every Thursdays in room 1A27. That's not here, but around there.
Thank you very much.
We're going to wrap up now. We have a little token for Dr. Phillips. We're going to invite. Yes, sir.
All right, let me apologize for being late. My name is Patrick Reed.
Sorry.
Let me apologize for being late. We just came to the door from a union meeting. Patrick Reed, Public Relations Officer for the Academic Staff Union. John Law, President, Academic Staff Union. I know it's not necessarily, but in a forum it's probably useful. And since the students here are University of Technology students, it might be relevant to ask Dr. Phillips a question concerning the university. May I? Okay. Presently, our information tells us that the University of the West Indies, a regional university, gets about 6 times. We're talking about just a little under $10 billion. They get about 6 times the subvention from the Jamaica government that this national university gets. And that anomaly imbalance creates a problem of brain drain, staff drifting, the drift away from UTECH. They might eventually get to UWI, but they do drift away regardless. What is your position on funding so as to really and truly establish a base on which to build a national university? To stem the drift that's happening now, to stem the hemorrhaging that's happening now, and to ensure that our students coming to the national university do have the right facilities and the right structure to grow on.
Let me thank you very much for the question. As the issue came up, maybe not as directly, but it came up before you came. I would summarize my position this way. I don't think we have to pose the issue as a regional versus national, because quite frankly, the vast majority of the students at MONA are Jamaicans, plus there are other facilities that are operating. But the issue of the parity is a valid concern. The issue of the parity of our support for university. Now, for UTECH and others, I mean, my thoughts on how we provide support for students are probably not sufficiently refined for me to just speak it out. But I am first of all, I don't believe in monopolies, either in business or in educational institutions. I am of the view that what we ought to be exploring, let me put it this way, is providing a support for every student that matriculates so that they can make their choices, right? But that requires a lot of work to be done. I think, however, and this may be particularly unwelcome with some of the UTECH community. We need to recall, I mean, this one, not only is this institution national, but this institution was the brainchild of Norman Manley. This, what was then the College of Art, Science and Technology. And it was intended in his mind to be a science university, in the same way that you had MIT alongside Harvard to use an example, to be a science university, because it was felt that this was the deficiency. We came into a country where the priorities was people doing law and medicine and that stream of work, and that you needed, especially if we were going to get into the modern sciences, the engineering, mathematically based sciences, and the like. This is what we needed. It was simultaneous with our entry into modern industry in the form of bauxite aluminum, where we said we needed to have the people. Now, in many respects, I think I would say this: we have to revisit the specializations that are going to take place. And so, yes, it's a discussion that should take place about how we get greater parity, but I would like to see in that discussion consideration of the question of how do we ensure that we are in fact going to be looking to the sciences of to the professions, the careers, the academic expertise of the future, and not trying to replicate too much. I think there is some of that, but we also need to go. But we have to have that discussion, and alongside it, which is a point I made as Minister of Finance to the University of the West Indies people, and I would say it here, not being the Minister of Finance. The justice of the case will not in and of itself expand the resources available. And that is something that we still, the country, and them say we're gone by the morning, can come good at evening, but not quickly. The reality is that we are still spending about 50% of our budget paying off debt from the past. Some countries, maybe Argentina, just said they were not going to pay. That's possible. And I tell you, we looked at it. It's not. It was something bigger, because it was like jumping off of a cliff, bungee jumping without the rope. So we can't. I mean, Argentina has the prospect of saying they can produce the things that the rest of the world is not prepared to sell them. We can't. And that's what it would mean. We have been here before as a country. We have been to the place where the ships used to sail into Kingston Harbor and says, pay us the cash, deposit it in the New York Bank first before we offload oil. And they used to do the same thing with medicines. We went there as a country. And I always say the most important thing about life for an individual is to learn the lessons of it. Part of our problem is that we keep learning the same lesson over and over and over again. So the question of parity is a valid question, but the question of adequacy of the resources to really develop the first class institution that you want, we want, and the whole country needs is a question that we need to debate further. How are we going to do it? How are we going to find the resources? And an important thing in doing that, when resources are limited, is not to try to do everything, but to concentrate on those things in which you have a decisive advantage. Right? So that's where I will rest my case.
I'm going to invite Adrian to now come and present this to Dr. Phillips on behalf of UTECH Visions.
On behalf of UTECH Visions, we'd like to present to you Dr. Peter Phillips for your service to the party and continued dedication to youth service.
And I will invite Patrick Palmer, our incoming president, to do the vote of thanks.
Afternoon, everyone. We all say all good things must come to an end, but this does not come to an end. It will continue, I am sure. And anywhere the party leader goes, we will follow him because he will make some good steps in the right direction. I want to thank all those persons who made this event possible today. Party leader, I know it meant a lot to you from the conception of this idea, and it is a plus. But there was no better place to start your tour than UTECH, because there's a big debate about age and who can attract youths. But look at what is happening here today, party leader. The future is bright. Comrade Phillips, stay beside Daddy. Right? You know what is coming. Comrade Robinson, thank you for being here. Comrade Imani, Chief of Staff at the Office of the Opposition Leader. All the other comrades present, all the staff there, thanks for everything that you have done to make this event possible. Thanks to the staff of the university who gave us the necessary resources and the room that this event could go on without any hiccups. Thanks to our advisors, Comrade Finzi Smith, Comrade Lynch, and Comrade Archer, who most of them came in at the last point because they were made aware late, but they did all they could to assist us in making this a success. Thanks to all the other groups here this afternoon, UE Visions, I know representatives from Microvisions are here, NIA, the Patriots, and also the PNPYO. I want to also acknowledge the councillor caretaker for the Mona Division, Comrade Dallas Campbell, who is also here, the former member of Parliament who probably had left, Comrade Andre Hilton, and also in my presence, who followed me from Portmore, Comrade Rainier Benjamin, councillor for the Westchester Division in Portmore. Thanks to every other person who took the time out of their busy schedule to make this item a priority on their agenda. We look forward to your continued support. Thank you.